As you watch this incredible story of honor, respect, and redemption, we'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Let's see how far this story reaches. And if you found this moment as powerful as we did, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Tomorrow, we have something truly special lined up, one story you won't want to miss. Stay tuned, and let's keep sharing these tales of courage and resilience together. He thought he could bully an old soldier. He was wrong. The crisp autumn air carried a sense of solemnity as William Carter, an 81-year-old retired major, stepped out of the car, leaning heavily on his walnut cane. His granddaughter, Emily, walked beside him, her hand gently supporting his arm. Every year, they made this journey to Arlington National Cemetery for the Veterans Day ceremony, a promise he had kept for decades. The walk had grown harder with time, but some commitments ran deeper than pain. William adjusted the medals pinned to his navy blue jacket, his fingers trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of memory. Each medal told a story, a chapter in a life shaped by duty and sacrifice. The Gulf War, the battles fought, the men lost, faces of comrades long gone flickered in his mind like faded photographs. Today marked 50 years since one of the hardest days of his life, a day that had changed him forever. "Are you doing okay, Grandpa?" Emily asked, her voice filled with concern. "I've been through worse," William replied with a small smile, his deep voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside him. They reached a bench near the tomb of the unknown soldier, where he could rest before the ceremony. Around them, visitors moved with quiet reverence, pausing to read the names etched into stone. Some took photos, others simply stood in silence, paying their respects. William sat down, exhaling slowly, letting the moment sink in. That's when he noticed them, a group of young men, loud and unruly. Even from a distance, he could smell the alcohol on them, despite the early hour. One of them, Tyler Grant, a tall, muscular man with an arrogant stance, seemed to scan the crowd, looking for something, or someone, to target. William had seen that look before, the kind that invited trouble. Emily squeezed his hand. "Don't mind them, Grandpa. Let's just focus on today." William nodded, though his instincts, honed from years in combat, told him to stay aware. He had spent his life fighting for the very freedom that allowed men like Tyler to act so carelessly. But some lessons could only be learned the hard way. And today, Tyler Grant was about to learn one. William adjusted his grip on his cane, trying to shake off the unease creeping into his gut. His body may have aged, but his instincts never dulled. Something about Tyler Grant, the way he moved, the way his eyes darted around, put him on high alert. The young man wasn't just drunk, he was looking for trouble. Tyler nudged one of his buddies, a smirk curling on his lips as he pointed toward William. "Look at this guy," he scoffed, loud enough for the old veteran to hear. "Playing dress-up with his grandpa's medals." His friends chuckled, their laughter fueled by the alcohol they'd smuggled and disguised as water bottles. Encouraged by their reaction, Tyler took a few casual steps closer. His 6-foot frame loomed over William, his presence dripping with mockery. Emily stiffened beside her grandfather. "Excuse me," she snapped. "You need to move along." Tyler's smirk widened. "Or what?" he taunted, his voice dripping with arrogance. He turned his attention back to William. "Come on, old man. Those real medals, or did you get 'em off eBay?" William met his gaze with quiet dignity, his expression unshaken. 42nd Infantry Division. Gulf War. His voice was steady, his words precise. Tyler scoffed, rolling his eyes. "Yeah, right." Probably sat behind a desk, shuffling papers. He took a step closer, invading William's space. The air around them shifted. People in the crowd started to notice. Conversations quieted. A few tourists pulled out their phones, sensing something was about to happen. Emily placed a protective hand on William's arm. "Let's go, Grandpa. He's not worth it." But Tyler wasn't done. His gaze flickered to the deep scar on William's neck. "That real, too? Or just a scratch from shaving?" The laughter from his friends died down. Even they could feel the tension thickening. William remained still, his grip tightening around his cane, though not in anger, just in restraint. He had faced far worse men than Tyler Grant. This kid wasn't his enemy. But Tyler wanted a reaction. And when words failed, he chose another tactic. With a sharp, deliberate movement, he reached out, grabbing at one of William's medals. The fragile pin snapped, sending the decoration clattering to the ground. The crowd gasped. Emily's face burned with rage. "That's enough," she shouted, stepping between them. But before she could act, before anyone else could interfere, another presence stirred. Across the courtyard, Staff Sergeant Jonathan Hayes, the honor guard on duty, had seen everything. And he was already moving. William exhaled slowly, his pulse steady despite the insult, despite the blatant disrespect. Decades of discipline kept his emotions in check, but Emily was furious. She bent down to grab the fallen medal, her hands shaking with rage. "You don't get to touch that," she snapped, her voice sharp. Tyler smirked, taking another step forward. "Relax, sweetheart. It's just a piece of metal." The air felt heavier now. The crowd, once filled with murmurs, had fallen into hushed silence. People were watching, waiting, unsure of what might happen next. But one man had already decided. Staff Sergeant Jonathan Hayes, standing at attention just 20 yards away, had seen enough. Every insult, every shove, every ounce of mockery directed at the veteran, he had tracked it all with unwavering focus. But it wasn't just duty that made his muscles tense. It was something deeper. His father had served in the 42nd Infantry Division, just like William Carter. And he had never made it home. A flicker of movement caught his eye, Tyler lunging forward. Not just words anymore. His fingers curled into William's jacket, gripping the row of polished medals as if he had the right to take them. And that was it. Hayes stepped out of formation. A collective gasp rippled through the onlookers. The tomb of the unknown soldier guard never breaks protocol. Their discipline is legendary. Their stillness is sacred. For over 200 years, they had upheld that code, remaining motionless no matter what happened around them. Until now. The unmistakable sound of polished boots striking pavement echoed as Hayes closed the distance in seconds, his movements sharp and deliberate. "Excuse me, sir." His voice cut through the tense silence like a blade. Tyler froze, his grip still on William's jacket. His cocky grin flickered, the arrogance in his eyes shifting into something else. Confusion. Uncertainty. Hayes, standing in his full ceremonial uniform, deep red jacket, crisp white gloves, and the imposing weight of the old guard, stared him down. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes were steel. "Let go of the veteran," Hayes said evenly. "And step back." Tyler hesitated, but for the first time, he was rattled. He hadn't expected anyone, let alone a soldier in full dress uniform, to intervene. He let go, but his pride refused to back down. "What are you gonna do?" he sneered. "Aren't you supposed to be a statue or something?" Hayes didn't blink. "I am a U.S. Army Honor Guard," he said, voice steady. "And you are harassing a decorated veteran on sacred ground." Tyler scoffed, but his bravado wasn't landing the way it had before. His friends had started inching away, distancing themselves from the unfolding confrontation. The crowd had grown, many now holding up their phones, capturing the moment. "Apologize," Hayes ordered, his voice carrying the weight of command. "Then leave." For a second, Tyler actually considered it. His eyes darted to the growing number of onlookers, the whispers, the judgment. But his pride, his need to feel in control, pushed him in the wrong direction. He laughed, shaking his head. "Or what?" Then, like a fool, he shoved the soldier. The moment his hands made contact, the world seemed to slow. And in one swift, precise motion, Hayes moved. The arrogance on Tyler's face vanished as he suddenly found himself spun around, arm locked behind his back, his body pinned against the stone pavement with the kind of efficiency that only years of combat training could produce. A sharp gasp went through the crowd. A woman whispered, "Oh my God." Hayes's voice remained calm, as if he were simply reciting orders. "Assaulting a member of the U.S. military is a criminal offense," he stated. "So is disturbing the peace and harassing a veteran." Tyler struggled, but Hayes barely applied pressure, just enough to remind him that he was completely outmatched. The crowd had gone from shocked silence to scattered applause. Someone whistled. The phones were still rolling, capturing every second of the moment. And then, from the other side of the memorial, military officers began approaching. Tyler, now truly panicked, realized he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. Tyler gritted his teeth, his face pressed against the cold pavement as Staff Sergeant Jonathan Hayes kept his grip firm. The weight of the soldier's knee on his back made it clear, he wasn't going anywhere. The crowd around them had fallen into a stunned silence, their eyes locked onto the scene unfolding before them. A woman's voice rang out. "I got the whole thing on video." Several others murmured in agreement, their phones still pointed at Tyler's humiliating downfall. The sharp click-clack of approaching boots signaled the arrival of senior military officers. A commanding voice cut through the air. "Sergeant Hayes, release him. Now." Hayes obeyed instantly, rising to his feet in one swift, disciplined motion. He stood at attention, his hands clenched behind his back, his face unreadable. Tyler groaned as he pushed himself up, rubbing his wrist and glaring. But whatever confidence he had before was gone. Colonel Michael Reynolds, a seasoned officer with silver hair and piercing blue eyes, studied the scene. His gaze shifted from Tyler to Hayes, then to Major William Carter, who stood tall beside his granddaughter, still gripping his cane. "Major Carter," the colonel said, nodding in recognition. "Are you all right?" William gave a curt nod. "I've faced worse, Colonel." Tyler, seizing his chance, scoffed. "This is ridiculous. I didn't even do anything. That guy attacked me." "Enough." The colonel's voice was ice cold. "You assaulted a veteran. You disrupted a memorial. And you put your hands on a U.S. Army honor guard." He turned toward a lieutenant standing nearby. "Call the U.S. Park Police. I want him detained." Tyler's eyes widened in panic. Wait. You can't be serious." He turned to the crowd, as if hoping for sympathy. But no one spoke up for him. Even his so-called friends had disappeared. Emily folded her arms. "Actions have consequences," she said sharply. "You should have thought about that before you put your hands on my grandfather." The lieutenant spoke into his radio, confirming the call for law enforcement. Meanwhile, Hayes remained motionless, his expression neutral, but his pulse steady. He knew breaking protocol had consequences. But in that moment, it had been worth it. Colonel Reynolds shifted his attention to Hayes. "Sergeant, do you realize what you've done?" "Yes, sir," Hayes said without hesitation. "And I do not regret it." The colonel studied him for a long moment. Discipline exists for a reason. But so does honor. He glanced at the growing crowd, the dozens of cameras still recording. This video is already spreading like wildfire. The world just saw a U.S. soldier standing up for a veteran. And frankly, we could use more moments like this. Hayes gave a slight nod but remained silent. He knew he had technically violated orders. But hearing those words from his superior officer? That was something. The distant wail of sirens echoed through the cemetery. The police had arrived. Tyler backed away, shaking his head. "Come on, this is crazy. It was just a joke." Colonel Reynolds didn't even look at him. "Escort him off the premises. Let the police handle the charges." Two officers stepped forward, grabbing Tyler by the arms. He thrashed for a moment, then slumped, realizing there was no escaping this. As they led him away, he cast one final glance back at William Carter. But the veteran had already turned his attention back to the memorial, his expression unreadable. The ceremony would continue. The honor of the fallen would remain intact. And Tyler Grant? He would learn that some lessons come at a cost. Months had passed since that chaotic morning at Arlington National Cemetery. Winter had settled in, blanketing the grounds with a thin layer of snow. The crisp air carried a quiet stillness, a stark contrast to the tension that had once filled this place. Major William Carter walked slowly, his walnut cane pressing into the frozen earth with each step. This time, he was alone. His granddaughter, Emily, was home, caring for her newborn son, a boy she had named Peter, after one of William's fallen brothers in arms. As he approached the Veterans Memorial, a solitary figure caught his eye. Standing near the tomb of the unknown soldier was Tyler Grant. William stopped, his fingers tightening around his cane. The last time he'd seen the young man, Tyler had been face down on the pavement, humiliated, handcuffed, and dragged away by police. But today, there was something different about him. Gone was the cocky smirk, the arrogance in his stance. Instead, Tyler stood stiffly, his hands shoved into the pockets of a worn army surplus jacket. His gaze was locked onto the names etched in stone, his expression unreadable. William stepped forward. Tyler heard the sound of his cane tapping against the stone and turned, eyes widening in surprise. Major Carter. William studied him. There were no signs of defiance, no drunken slur to his words. If anything, he looked ashamed. After an awkward pause, Tyler cleared his throat. I finished my 200 hours of community service last week. Spent it cleaning veterans' graves all over the city. He exhaled, watching his breath cloud in the cold air. Fitting, huh? William nodded. Yes, it is. Tyler hesitated, then pulled something from his pocket. It was the medal, the one he had knocked to the ground that day, the one William had later given him. He held it out. I came to return this. It belongs with you. But William shook his head. No. It belongs with someone who understands its meaning. Tyler stared at the medal, fingers closing around it slowly. He swallowed hard, as if forcing himself to speak. I enlisted, he finally admitted. Army National Guard. Basic training starts next month. For the first time, William felt genuine surprise. Staff Sergeant Hayes has been helping me prepare, Tyler continued, shifting on his feet. He said his father would have wanted that. Silence stretched between them, not tense, but thoughtful. William turned, looking at the honor guards standing in perfect formation near the tomb. Their uniforms, their discipline, their unwavering devotion to duty. Sentinels of honor, of tradition, of brotherhood. He looked back at Tyler, seeing a man who had once been lost, but had now found direction. William nodded, his voice firm but kind. Then make it count. Tyler met his gaze, standing just a little straighter. Yes, sir. Two men. One nearing the end of his journey. The other just beginning. Connected by a moment of failure. Changed by a moment of redemption. This story is more than just an encounter, it's a lesson in honor, respect, and redemption. Now, we want to hear from you. What do you think about Tyler's transformation? Do you believe people can truly change when given the right guidance? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever witnessed a moment like this in real life? Maybe a time when someone stood up for what was right? We'd love to hear your stories. And while you're here, let us know where you're watching from. It's incredible to see how far these stories reach. If you found this story powerful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Tomorrow, we have another unforgettable tale, one that you definitely won't want to miss. Thank you for being part of this community, for sharing these moments, and for keeping the spirit of honor and courage alive. Your voice matters, and we can't wait to read your thoughts.